Hey y'all, welcome back to VW Family Farm. My name is Andrea, and today's video we are going to talk about some terms that if you get into regenerative agriculture and grazing cows, and if you go to any sort of conferences, you're going to hear some of these terms. You're going to hear a lot about carbon. You're going to hear a lot about sequestering your carbon and keeping the carbon in your soil and not doing things to release that carbon and lose the carbon out of your soil. So today we're going to talk about using cattle to restore your soil health and how that works and what's the deal with all this carbon talk and all of those things. So let's get into it. So you can see the cows following me here, but we are going to talk a lot about our soil health today, and I want to give you some quick tips, some things that you need to know if you are going to try to rotate cows and try to heal your land. So livestock practices and just farming practices in general in the past have taken more than they have added back to the soil, substantially more. And it's kind of like a lot of things in life. We only know a certain way of doing things until we discover a better way. And that seems pretty simple to say, but it's so true. And so a lot of practices that we have used for generations have actually harmed and depleted our soils, and we're learning more about that every day. So research is helping us realize that properly using livestock can actually help us regain our soil life or soil function, which is awesome news because soil is depleted pretty much all over. A lot of farmland is depleted of carbon, and it was just understood. It was taught in college agronomy classes and different sciences that it takes hundreds of years to recover your soil once it's depleted, like a lot of farmland is today. We're just learning all the time that using these techniques of livestock rotation and things is just speeding up this process light years. What was understood to take hundreds of years, now we realize can just take a few. And that's pretty awesome news for farmers. We focused so long on what's happening above the ground with what we're growing and with what our animals are eating and with the animals we're able to grow off on our land and our pastures, that we've neglected what's happening below the ground. And that's where it all begins. If you want a successful farm and a successful grass-based operation, which pretty much is all of us, because it doesn't matter if you feed out on grain or not, animals eat grass. All livestock eats grass. So if you want a successful operation, you need to start paying attention to what's happening below ground. So below the surface of what you can see, there is all kinds of biological activity and all kinds of life going on. There's no longer enough organic matter. That's just simply the facts. It has depleted over years of farming practices. And those things in our soils are alive and they feed off carbon. So let's talk about what is the big deal with carbon. Carbon basically equals life for your soils. Carbon is what feeds your soil organisms. It is what provides life and all the things that you need to grow good things for your animals to eat and for your land to thrive. But the fact is, carbon has been depleted in our soils by tilling, by haying, by growing crops and cutting them off of our land. All of that releases carbon back into the atmosphere. And so if you don't want to lose your carbon, you need to keep tilling and plowing to a minimum. You honestly need to keep cutting hay to a minimum. I know you see that here on our farm, and that is because we're just simply not there yet. We would love to get to where we graze year round, and we are moving in that direction, but we're simply not there yet. But every time we do that, we cut hay and strip off our land, we're releasing our carbon, which in turn is releasing food and things that our soil needs. So those are things we need to keep to a minimum. Another important thing is when you cut off all of the vegetation off your land, or whether you till it or plow it, that increases the temperature. Cover crops and things like that, or just a good stand of vegetation on your land, keeps that soil temperature down. When it heats up, you can just imagine, it's just common sense that all those good organisms in your soil start to die off when they start to get too hot. And so that is another thing, is keeping the soil covered. Keeping the ground from being bare is very, very important. So how can we add carbon to our soils? I'm telling you how to keep it and how important it is, but how can we use livestock to add it back into our soils and to get our carbon up, and thus do what I said earlier, which was used to take hundreds of years to improve your soil, but can now just take a few? How do we do that? And that is where these guys come in. You can see we are into winter feeding time. There's a little green patch right here, but for the most part, all of our grasses are dormant right now. We're heading headlong straight quickly into winter. And so we are not there yet with grazing. We do have some standing hay all over our property, but we are rotating in that direction. This is the paddock they're about to come into. You can see it has some green on it. And then we'll be heading back throughout our property to some places that have a bit taller standing forage. But we're working in that direction here on our farm. That's our goal. We're working there all the time. But let's talk about how these cows can improve your soil and sequester carbon. So one thing is intensive grazing with trampling. And what I mean by that is letting your land get a bit taller. You can see it's not really tall where I'm showing you right now, but in some places back on our land, it's way taller than that. And it may look like an overgrown field that needs bush hogging to someone else, but to us, it's gold. Because what some people count as waste, we count as treasure. Because when they go into those bit taller pastures and you let them intensively graze it, they're also gonna trample part of it, and that trampling is magic. You can see these cows are standing here ready to move. They're not hungry. They've been fed 2 bales of hay already today, but they're conditioned to move. We move our cows all the time here on our farm. It's how we've been able to regenerate and revitalize this farm. And so they're just conditioned to it. They're always ready. You can move them and come out here in 2 hours and they'd want to move again. They love to move and they know which direction they're going to move in. So that's just part of it. So when they go into a field that's a bit taller and they trample part of it down in their intensive grazing, they are actually doing you a huge favor by feeding your soil. That grass that they're trampling down is definitely feeding your organisms in your soil, as well as keeping it covered. You may think, what's the difference in that and going out and cutting hay, and then when I need to feed it, unrolling it on my land? Because you see us do that on our land. Well, the fact is, you're never gonna go cut a field and strip all the grass off and then be able to go back and unroll it as uniformly as it was growing on there. It's just not gonna happen. As well as when you go and roll hay, we unroll hundreds of bales of hay a year. And we do it in just small sections of our farm as opposed to the land it was cut off of. And we never get that land covered. It's just the fact of it. You're just not gonna be able to cover the ground as well as trampling does. Another benefit of intensive grazing, as well as letting your plants get a bit taller and then letting them into intensive graze and trample that down, is that you're gonna have bigger plants, and bigger plants equate most of the time to bigger, deeper roots. And those deeper roots are gonna have more sugars and starches in them. And the deeper they are, the more they're gonna exchange those nutrients with your soil life, thus feeding your soil. And well-fed soil, healthy soil, lots of organic matter, lots of microorganisms equate to healthy soil. Those equate to healthy pastures and revitalized farms and taking care of the earth and healthy animals for you to feed your family and all those different things. And the list goes on and on and on. And it's just feeding one thing to feed another, to feed another, to feed another. And to me, that's just good stewardship. So I want to thank you guys for taking a walk out to the cows with me. I hope you realize that carbon is as important as they say it is, because that's what feeds your soil. And that's where it all starts with raising livestock. I also want to encourage you guys, I don't care if you have 1 cow or you have 100 or 1,000. I don't care if you have 1/4 of an acre or 250,000 acres. Start rotating. You will see so many benefits from it on your pastures, and not only on your pastures, on your pocketbook, because the healthier your land and your soil is, the more pounds per acre you can run, the more you can raise, the more you can feed yourself and your family as well as other families. Whatever your end goal is for your operation, I promise you, it sounds cliche, but if you take care of your land, it will take care of you. And you will have a more successful operation because you will be able to raise more, and not only more, healthier animals. You will have a much more thriving operation if you start from the ground up, literally. For more tips and tricks on raising cattle and regenerative farming, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button below, hit that notification bell. If you would, share us with other people. Share us on your social medias or just by word of mouth, however you choose to do that. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching, and God bless.